So the Overwing fairing goes on here, and it looks like the slot in here is too narrow also, so I'm gonna open that slot up. I noticed that this board was loose here, so I'm just going to hit that with a little bit of hot melt glue. Okay, I just opened up that slot a little bit, and this seems to fit nicely in place. And I'm going to get out my wood pack. And what you're looking for is this lumber right here. So when you're fitting this Overwing fairing, the first thing you do is you want to glue these balsa boards. If you've got this fit about right, you don't want this to be too tight. I trimmed it back so I have like a 1/16 of an inch gap on either side. And you want to bond these in, but they run into that radius there, so I'm going to just work the shape, just knock this corner off some, maybe put a little bit of radius on it so they fit here, and when they're installed they're square with the sides. I'm just going to knock that corner off just a little bit. Now you want about the same width of these little plywood boards sticking out the bottom, so you just get them parallel. You can glue these on with epoxy. Super glue even works for these balsa parts, or even hot melt glue. So I have these bonded on in place. Okay, the next thing you want to do is take one of these plywood pieces, or two of them, and bond them on the back side of this flange. And where they want to go is they want to fill that gap. So when you get them glued in place, they're filling that gap, and they're flush with this board also. So this takes some fitting. I usually start with them like this. Now this one fits better like this. I usually have to cut off this corner because it wants to get into this nut, and I usually have to sand this edge off. You want to try to fit in there as flat as possible, so it matches. When you're done, it sits in here as flush as possible with this piece of balsa, and you know, maybe a 1/16 inch gap here between the balsa, so just nice and flush there. So I kind of rounded this corner and knocked this corner off here. And that actually seems to do it. It seems to be sticking out nice and parallel and flush. And when I put this in place, it looks like there's enough room for some adjustment here. Then I'll bond that in place with either, probably it's best to use epoxy on this because this is probably the highest stress joint on this connection. So I'm going to do the same on the other side. I'm going to round this corner. Yeah, it fits in there nice and square. You can trim other aspects of this later. The most important thing when you're fitting this now is that it's flush. It's flush and it's square. It's not coming out at an angle because of some glob of glue on the back side. Got a glob of glue overhanging here, so I want that to be cleaned up. So what you're looking for is that when this overwing fairing is installed, you have a nice flush joint on this front side, or all these boards are flush with one another, and then you have enough gap in there that you can make some adjustment. This one's a little tight on this side, so I'm just going to trim back this balsa wood so it's easy to trim back. Not any gap there for adjustment. I think I'll do the same on this side, just bring it back maybe 1/16 of an inch or millimeter. So you end up with these boards in place like that. Then you want to get those last two curved boards. And they glue to the balsa board. They glue to the balsa board, and then you'll end up drilling a hole through this board into the other piece of plywood, and that's actually how you mount this overwing fairing in the front. So I'll just trial fit it. It goes on just like that. So you want everything to be flush. I like to keep this as high as possible, and you don't want this to hit the fiberglass body. So I'll glue that in place. Leave yourself a little bit of gaps in here to allow for final fitting when you get your nose piece back on. It can change the width a little bit of things. Looks like I could have lowered these boards down a little bit. But that's what you end up with. I'm going to mark some pilot drill holes. So a couple clearance holes for the screws in these boards.